Happy New Year, and welcome to our international audience. My name is Danielle Joines, and I am the Deputy Secretary General of the U.S. chapter of the World Humanitarian Drive, otherwise known as WHD. The World Humanitarian Drive is an organization whose mission is to promote education, peace, and trade harmony worldwide. Today, the U.S. chapter is very excited to bring you this event, Food Resolutions 2021. As a licensed clinical professional counselor practicing in the U.S., I have become acutely aware of the many challenges citizens of the world have endured during the COVID-19 pandemic. Massive hits to economies have depleted tourism revenue, while skyrocketing unemployment rates have led to food scarcity and unstable living conditions. In addition, the plight of farming communities, such as in India, has been devastating. The significant loss of life due to the pandemic has been crippling both emotionally and physically to essential employees and families across the world. The World Humanitarian Drive has heard the people's cry as you've been trying to hold on to mental, physical, and emotional wellness. So we wanted to bring you a message of hope. Fellow board member and philanthropist John Mitchell will be our host today as we visit with three chefs we think you will find inspiring. John comes to us from Las Vegas, and he will introduce chef and documentary filmmaker Dilip Barman, who is an expert on how plant-based cooking is medicine against disease. And then we will be inside the Heron Coffee House, where Tony Thorns has taken his sustainable fashion line and infused it with his well-known Hamachi Hunter brand. And lastly, from Florida, we will see John Licker's moving story about how his love for his mother guided him to become a heartfelt pastry chef. His cookies will be very comforting. These three chefs were chosen not just because they have a celebrity status, but also because they are uniquely talented, but more importantly, they care about their communities by providing education and outreach. So thank you for being with us today, and John, take it away.
So once again, I would like to say thank you to my board member, the World Humanitarian Drive board member Danielle. Appreciate you for everything that you've said about tonight's event. I'm very excited. Once again, I'm John Baton Mitchell. I'm also a board member for the World Humanitarian Drive, and I'm just excited because I have three chefs that are going to be incredible tonight. I know the audience is excited about seeing them. And I'm just going to first start off with letting you know we have Chef Dilip Barman, we have Chef Tony Thorn, and we have Chef Jason Licker. All incredible, all extremely relevant within their fields. And we're just honored that they came and actually are willing to share about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, give us some examples. And although we can't have a taste test, that's the biggest part about this pandemic. I can't actually taste the food live. We know that you all are going to cook the food. Absolutely. And ultimately, then you can report back to me on how you liked it. So I'm going to get started with our first chef. Chef, let me just give you a little bit about what I wrote. Certified Food for Life instructor. We have what I consider a community servant. You are the president of the Triangle Vegetarian Society. And then, of course, you're executive producer for the Code Blue documentary, which is an incredible piece of work. And so I just, once again, knowing that you're residing in North Carolina, I'm out here in Las Vegas. So I say thank you, first of all. But most importantly, I just want to get started by asking you, tell everybody, what's the benefit of plant-based lifestyle as an individual and also as a community or global community at large? Everybody always wants to know, plant-based, not plant-based, tell us.
Well, first of all, thank you, John and team, for having me. I'm honored to be part of this project with you, and hope we reach some good folks out there, and am happy to help answer any questions. So you're right. A lot of people nowadays talk about plant-based eating, and sometimes we use words like vegan, vegetarian, plant-based, whole food plant-based. what's the story? What does this mean? So could I quickly define a couple terms?
Sure, definitely, please.
So
Educate me.
So vegans are those who don't eat animal products. So they are vegetarians who don't drink cow's milk, don't eat dairy cheese, don't eat eggs. It also goes to lifestyle. They don't wear silk, they don't wear wool. I shouldn't say they, I should say we. I'm a vegan. Sometimes vegans,
Correct.
often they make these decisions based on ethics. They don't want to hurt animals. They don't want to kill animals. But then, John, I don't know if you know this, but there's this idea that veganism is healthy, and it's by and large true, but it's not enough to be vegan, because a vegan can be eating French fries, drinking beer, having nachos with vegan cheese, and
Right.
those
Okay.
aren't the healthiest choices. So people who are interested in whole food, plant-based eating, which I'm very interested in as well, are interested in making sure we eat healthy food. We're eating food as close to the way it was grown. And so getting to your question, what are the benefits? So I'm involved with lots of different initiatives in my life. I used to be the chair of the city's bicycle committee, for example. I advocate for children for lots of different things. But I have to tell you, John, that promoting plant-based eating is one of my biggest joys, because all the arguments, all the evidence is utterly consistent. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are concerned about living well and living long. It turns out there's overwhelming evidence that the best diet is a plant-based diet. There's many studies, for example, the Adventists. Do you know who the Adventists are, John? John, the Seventh-day Adventists?
No, go ahead.
So the Adventists are a religious group. They're a Christian group, and they have their Sabbath on Saturday instead of Sunday. And they take the first book of the Bible, Genesis, literally, that that we should be eating plant-based foods. And so they're a great group to look at, because about half of all Adventists are vegetarian, and very few of them drink alcohol or smoke. So they're a great group to study. So there have been all of these studies out by you, Loma Linda, and other places that have done long longitudinal studies that have shown that vegetarians and vegans live, I think it's 6.5 or 7 years longer than non-vegetarians. And you might say, I want to live longer, but I don't want to be bedridden. I don't want to have all these diseases. So the good news is vegans tend to live longer, and they live longer with less ongoing disease. They tend to live healthier lives, and when the time comes, they go. So that's one reason. It's probably the very best thing you can do for your health. Another reason.
And how long did you say you've been a vegan?
So I didn't. I've been.
How long did you say you?
I've been a vegetarian for a good part of my life. I've been a vegan for about 20 years, I guess.
Okay.
So, and I the classes I teach, I don't like people to take these things on faith. So I ask people, please check it out. There's so many credible sources of information that back up what I've said. I could share quite a few websites and books and researchers, medical doctors, films. So human health is one good reason to go plant-based. Now you might be saying, hey, I like my meat, and what this guy's saying kind of makes some sense. So let me cut back. So the bad news, there's bad news and good news. The bad news is you could do even better. You can cut totally back and enjoy all the benefits of being a vegan. But the good news is even incremental steps make a difference. So you want to check it out and go vegan once a week? Yay. You're going to see almost certainly some very nice benefits. So human health's one really good reason. Can I share more reasons, John?
Definitely. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Another good reason to go plant-based is it's by far the best thing you can do for the environment. So John, I homeschool. I homeschool my daughter. She's in 6th grade. And she did a good piece of work last year in 5th grade. She talked about, have you heard of the food web and food chains?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
She did some work, and it turns out if you are low on the food chain, so I'm not green, and you're not green either.
Right.
It's too bad we're not green, because if we were green, we would go out and sun ourselves, and we'd photosynthesize, and we'd have more time. We wouldn't have to eat, and we'd generate our own food. So I'll break it to you, we cannot create our own food. So we've got to eat something. The only creatures that can create their own food are plants. And so when I eat a plant, I'm eating it directly. Those of us who've had physics in high school or college know that every time you convert energy, you lose something like 80 to 90% of the energy in the original source. So by eating those plants, instead of eating the cow that ate those plants, I'm getting a lot more of that energy that came from the sun. And so it's by far the best thing you can do for the environment. And there are all these unbelievable statistics that say that if we stop eating meat just one day a week, it's equivalent to taking something like millions of cars off the road. And so overnight, if we went vegan, we would be well on our way to solving global warming. So even if you don't care for your health, even if you don't care for animals, you're doing the very best thing you can do for the environment. It's much better than saying I'm going to drive less, I'm going to take shorter showers. I was looking, the equivalent of eating a hamburger is something like the amount of water the water used to grow the meat for a hamburger is equivalent to something like the number of showers over 2 months or something like that. And so if we're concerned with the environment,
deal.
It's a huge deal. And so in my mind, I applaud people who think about these issues, whatever they're doing. But in my mind, I don't see how you can call yourself an environmentalist if you're eating meat. It's the biggest insult we make to the environment by eating meat, especially factory farmed meat. So that's another reason. And you know what to me is maybe the best reason to be vegan, John?
Go ahead.
The best reason is the taste. It tastes awesome.
It does now. That I have to admit, I've had a few dishes, and especially living here on the West Coast, it is definitely one of the things that tends to be sometimes a little bit just more open, you know what I mean? And just a little bit more receptive to having that as something that is more of a norm. And there are some good dishes out there. I got to admit that. And you can let go of the meat, you know what I mean? I've had many of dinners where I didn't have to have, you know, the steak, or maybe just splurge and say, okay, I'm going to do a rib dinner. Like, not necessary, you know what I mean? And it was just as good, just as tasty. And it can be different. I will admit that it's a different with regard to your palate. But at the end of the day, seasonings are seasonings, and, you know, health is health. So I think, you know, as people are listening, they can, you know, of course, form their own judgment. But I think if it's about being a healthier lifestyle, why not? Why not? Can I ask you a question about the a slightly different topic, but not really, the food scarcity, the pandemic. So how did I'm going to read it right as I wrote it. I was explaining how food scarcity is a massive issue, especially with this pandemic and the impact. I want to know if you can tell us a little bit what efforts maybe have you had to do or you've been involved in with respect to this problem as it relates to maybe food scarcity, or what you maybe have been able to give back to the community within your work. If you can share a little bit about that for us.
I assume I don't have 3 hours.
You got 10. No.
So I'm so glad you asked that, because one other thing I was going to say earlier, so benefits of plant-based eating, it's the best thing for your health. By the way, talk to your healthcare provider before making any changes. But the statistics and the medical research, the nutritional research shows that eating plant-based is arguably the best thing for your health. It reduces the chances of heart disease, various kinds of cancer, diabetes. You know, if you have a well-planned, limited fat, whole food plant-based diet, you actually can arrest and reverse diabetes, heart disease. It's the only way shown to do these things. The alternative is medication, which isn't as effective. So, and if we have a chance a little later, I'd be glad to talk about my film, which talks about multiple sclerosis. And there's a lot of great information about plant-based diets to help help with MS. But getting to what you asked, one thing else I was going to say is another big benefit of plant-based eating is, as you know, there's a lot of food deserts out there, and there's a lot of issues of social justice. Going plant-based, you suddenly open up a lot more food. You don't have to restrict yourselves to this country. I was watching news earlier today about the terrible crisis going on in some other countries where they're not getting what's it called? The immunizations, not the immunizations, the vaccine. and they're having
vaccine. Yeah, the vaccine.
there was something that there was a report by the UN that said something like, because of COVID, the number of extremely poor people around the world is going to go up by, was it tens or hundreds of millions of people? It's terrible.
Wow.
If we move towards a plant-based diet, we'd have a lot more food to share around the country and to export to other countries. It's cheaper to grow. It goes much further. We'd have more than enough food to share. So that's one thing. There's a couple concrete things that I've done. So the Vegetarian Society, I have been running for some years now, 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't done it for some years, but there's an event coming up March 15th, the Great American Meat-Out. The Great American Meat-Out is a day where we urge people to go without meat for the day. And we promote all the benefits, health, environment, social justice, animal ethics, and so forth. And so we used to go to a local homeless shelter.
Mm-hmm.
We went to a place called the Durham Rescue Mission, for example. And what we would do is, if you're down and out, you don't have a job, you've lost your house, you don't have a house, you're homeless, and you're in the shelter, the last thing you need is some crazy guy, especially if they don't look like you, who's kind of moralizing and saying, thou shall not. And I'm not in that business. That's not me. I'm not going to tell you, John, what to do, or anybody else. When I point one finger to you, there's four fingers pointing back at me. There's a lot of things I should do. I should probably drive a little less. I don't drive much, but there's things I should do. I'm not in the business of saying you should. And I get that from my friend Howard Lyman, who's a famous vegan activist in the West Coast. So we used to go into this homeless shelter and we would talk about, hey guys, we're going to make some wonderful plant-based foods for you. And you're going to find, you're probably going to get more energy out of this food. And guess what? You guys need to go look for work. That's what the shelter is about. When you're there, you have to make a commitment every day to be looking for work. At least that used to be the way they ran it. I presume they still do. And so I would tell them, this is going to help you get back on your feet. And guess what? The food costs very little. You can buy dry beans for pennies, and we can show you ways to prepare it. We actually have a class that's oriented just specifically towards people, including people like you and me. I bet you even you, John, and me at one stage in our life, when we were in college, probably didn't have a lot of money. So even you and I count at points in our life as poor. I'm not poor now, but I know people who are poor, and we probably were poor in college in terms of having disposable income. So we have a class where we talk about how do you come up with wonderful, healthful meals where you have not much money to spend. So those are some things. And can I tell you this new initiative that I just had 2 conversations today that I'm in the midst of planning right now.
Oh yeah, go ahead, please.
So I'm really concerned about food deserts, and I'm particularly concerned about people of color, but people of all kinds. And so I have been doing a little bit of fundraising, and I have a project that I'm trying to get off the ground. I've been working with one restaurant for about 3 months, and it doesn't seem like it's going to work with them. So I'm engaging 2 other restaurants. And what I've said is, I want you to do something to help with social justice, but I don't want it to come out of your bottom line. I want you to sell your food, these 2 restaurants, just like you always do. But if I can raise money, would you be willing to come up with a menu of, and I'll help you, of healthy, whole food, plant-based dishes, delivered to the hood, go to places where they need you. You know, John, you and I get many, I shouldn't speak about you. I'm a privileged person. I get lots of benefits from society, but there are a lot of us who don't. Why don't we go to some of these places where people don't have money? They have, single parent households. They have, maybe it's a full family. They just don't have money. They have a lot of kids. They don't have money. And it's one thing to say to them, would you consider eating plant-based because you'll do well? But it's better, can I provide the food? Can I show up to your house and say, here's the food? And they might say, this sounds good, but I can only afford $3 for my meal because that's what I get at a fast food restaurant. So the deal I'm trying to work out is I don't like giving things away for free. And I know we don't have that much time, but I have stories about that. I've done this, right? So no matter how poor you are, unless you are, there are some people who don't have a penny. I'm not talking about those. But most people can spend $1.50, $1.20, $2 for food for the day. If you can spend a little bit, I don't want to give you food. I want you to pay this restaurant the $1.50, the $2, the $3. We have to figure that out. And I want the restaurant to get the $20 they'd normally get, which we would get from fundraising. That's what I'm working on right now. And I have several restaurants there. So let's go out there. Let's bundle it with education. I'll be out there and I'll talk about, here are the benefits of plant-based eating. Here's what you can do in your house. Maybe here's some beans, here's some rice. They will keep for months and months, and I'll show you how to prepare them. Don't go hungry. Don't do without, and try this kind of eating. And here's some benefits that you probably will see. So those are a few recent initiatives that I'm also involved with, John.
Well, and you know what, the thing that I love about the work that we've been doing with, WHD is that with the chapters being global and having, literally 12 chapters internationally, this conversation and all the chefs that come after you all can have an ability for a global conversation to occur. So although there may be something that's happening specifically within your direct community, the way you're talking though is a global conversation. I mean, literally,
I'm a resource.
We've had people, yeah, absolutely.
Reach out to me. I can help replicate what I'm doing.
Okay.
Could I throw something else out really quickly, John?
Yeah, go ahead. And I just have one more question, so please go.
So here's something else I thought if I should mention. I'm nutrition education director for a school, an elementary and middle school. And we have a lot of school lunch kids, people of lower income. So I've started a healthy snack program, and this is funded. The school pays not a penny for it. And what I do is teachers who sign up, I show them, I give them an electronic pressure cooker, and I give them tons of ingredients. And I write them a check to buy additional ingredients. And it's all plant-based and it's all organic. And what I do is I show the teachers, they're busy. I'm also a teacher, by the way. I teach math, and I'm nutrition education director, and I homeschool my daughter. So we underappreciate our teachers. Teachers have so much work. They're way underpaid. So I don't want to put a demand on the teachers. So I have this healthy snack program where it shouldn't take more than a few minutes of prep time. These kids 2 or 3 times a week have healthy food. They have oatmeal, they have beans and rice, they have lentils, they have quinoa at no cost to them, no cost to their families. I come in a few times a month and talk about, to the kindergartners, I'll teach them what is fiber. I'll tell them about why eating fiber helps you go to the bathroom. We talk about icky things. I talk to the 4th graders. I used to teach, now I focus on elementary. And on top of that, the money I've raised will pay the teacher. I also pay the teachers for their time. So this is something that I know I'm making a difference based on feedback I'm getting from families. At the end of the year, I throw a banquet for the 4th graders. They come to a gourmet restaurant. They get a gourmet vegan spread. They get free books, free DVDs, free literature. They get an apron. They get tons of stuff, all at no cost to the school or the people. So that's another little thing that I do to help with the community and help with social justice issues. We talk, as I said, I'm privileged, and sometimes I make a gaffe. So one of the teachers commented once to me, I was talking about shopping, and she said, I want to remind you that some of our kids, their families do not shop at Food Lion or Whole Foods or co-ops. They shop at the gas station. Yeah. And I'm so glad she reminded me of that, because now when I talk to kids, especially when I know some of them don't have the privileges I do, I'll say, these strawberries, you can get them at the gas station, but you can also go to the farmer's market. I point to other resources. So that's another little thing I do, John, in my community.
And clearly meeting the kids and the adults, for that matter, where they're at. But then most importantly, as I mentioned, I think it's appropriate, you clearly are that servant leader. But I want you also to have the ability to share a little bit. How did you decide on this path, especially as it relates to respecting with the food? How'd you get here?
It's a great question. So my parents are immigrants. My parents came from India. And when my parents came from India, there was nobody. We all have friends now. I know this is going to a global audience, but those of us in the United States, we all know people from South Asia, right? But back then in the 60s, believe it or not, there was about 1,000 people in the whole United States from India. There was highly restrictive immigration laws. They opened up in 64 with the space race, but there was nobody here from India. My parents were pioneers. And so my parents were both vegetarian for many generations, but I was brought up in small town Ohio and Chicago, and I never asked them. I didn't want to ask them, but they introduced me to meat. And I think what they were thinking is, most men don't cook, they rely on their moms or their wives. It's different in my household, of course. so they introduced me to meat, but it was always, our Jewish friends will know about kosher laws. So our Jewish friends, they have
Yes.
laws about what they can eat. So it's the same thing. My parents came from Hindu families. The times I ate meat, it was never at home. They would take me out to McDonald's. Dog and Suds was a place in Ohio. I would eat outside of the house, rarely at home. We would spread newspaper. I would wash my lips with soap. It was ritually unclean.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was the beginning of my journey. I used to eat a little bit of meat growing up. When I went to college, Johns Hopkins University, I ate meat. My second year, John, I had to cook for myself. We lived in apartments. And I went to the grocery store to shop. And I saw that it's different eating prepared food. I could see these were dead animals. And the ethics in me, it really sparked an ethical awakening in me. So I said, my family for generations has not eaten meat. I wasn't vegan. I didn't know about veganism at that point. Has not eaten meat. I know they can do it, and they can do it well. I don't have the heart to buy this and contribute to killing these animals. I was really influenced. I didn't want to hurt animals. So I became a vegetarian. I always was kind of, but in college I became a vegetarian.
Right.
Vegan was in graduate school. When I was in graduate school at Brown University, I was invited to a vegan Thanksgiving. And now I host the country's biggest vegan Thanksgiving. And I hope, John, you can come one year. And so I had never heard of veganism. And so I picked up the literature and I learned about it. And then after that, once I moved to North Carolina, I started running this group. I learned more and more about it, and I became vegan. So if that's your question, what put me on the journey, that's it. If your question was more about like making the film or the initiatives, I could answer that as well if you'd like me to.
Well, we have a little bit of, let's just go a little bit into that. I wanted to also share, because the one common theme that I don't think I was able to fully share with you was that each chef that we are going to speak to, they all have had some type of connection with breast cancer. And as you know, my nonprofit is Twirling to Fight Cancer, and we've done a big initiative in October. And so in continuing that same awareness, this felt very appropriate, especially as I'm hosting it, to just be able to connect with each of you in regard to healthy eating, but also just hearing personal stories. And so, like I said, that'll happen throughout the segment. But I know kind of starting off with you, it made it really nice because it is about how you eat. It is about the balance. It is about the health and understanding where your food is coming from. But most importantly, what are you taking in and what is it doing to heal your body? And so, you know,
Absolutely.
I first of all, thank you, of course, for the work you're doing. But it just was very moving when we talked and had our offline conversation, because there was that kindred spirit of just, we're both working to really make a difference. You know what I mean? And so, but I would love if you would share about Code Blue, talk about some of those projects, and then I don't want to disrespect your time. So,
Absolutely.
but I'd love to hear about it, and love the audience to really hear about it.
Let me put a word in about cancer. So Food for Life is a nutrition education program of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. It's an international group founded in DC by Neil Barnard, MD. He's written many books, been on public television. He's in our film Code Blue, which I'll talk about in a moment. And so it turns out that so many of the leading causes of death and health degradation in this country and around the world comes from diet. So Michael Greger, nutritionfacts.org. It's a great website. It's extensive. You can go to it and say, tell me about tofu, tell me about strawberries, tell me about diabetes. And he'll cite all this wonderful medical and scientific literature. So our first class, the Food for Life program, was on cancer. It's called the Cancer Project, cancerproject.org. And Food for Life is, let me move for a second. Food for Life is fflclasses.org.
Oh, there it is. fflclasses.org. fflclasses.org.
So cancer, in our cancer class, we show what are the right foods to eat to help prevent the spread of cancer, to help manage cancer. And we have put our curriculum into a number of cancer centers. We have, there's more and more books coming out about, you know, to avoid getting cancer in the first place, go plant-based. So for example, some people enjoy grilling burgers or grilling things. Did you know that if you grill animal foods, flesh foods, muscle, meat, and fish, 100% of samples that we took from fast food and fine dining of the Physicians Committee did of grilled foods had high levels of heterocyclic amines, which are highly carcinogenic. They're highly carcinogenic.
Oh, God.
But you might say, I like grilling eggplant or tofu dogs or bean burgers. They don't generate heterocyclic amines. So speaking to cancer, the best thing you can do to avoid getting into a cancer situation is to go plant-based. And that, you were asking about my film.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm so honored to be part of the film Code Blue. Code Blue, I'm kind of a latecomer. I was involved the last year and a half, 2 years of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the story of my good friend, Sarai Stancic. Sarai Stancic. She is a doctor. She's an infectious disease specialist, and we've had some good conversations about COVID. And if we have a few minutes, I'd love to actually maybe even end with a few words about COVID and what plant-based eating has to contribute to helping with COVID. So anyhow, even doctors get sick.
Mm-hmm.
So Sarai got sick. She
Right.
She was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis.
Oh,
It's devastating.
Okay.
That's a devastating diagnosis. Yeah. So doctors go to their own doctors. So she went to see her doctor, and the doctor put her on this very difficult regimen. And it was hard. She had trouble sleeping. I don't remember she had lots of problems with the regimen. So she's a doctor, so she did her own research, and she found there was long-standing research, John, that showed that a plant-based diet could treat and maybe avoid MS. So she went to her doctor and she said, look, doctor, here's the evidence. I went to the medical school library or wherever she got it from. Here's all these credible peer-reviewed journals, and this will work. Maybe it's worth trying. The doctor said, no, I want you to continue. And so she did, but it was unbearable. So she said, look, I'm a big girl, I'm a doctor, and I know what I'm doing. I'm going to put myself on a plant-based diet. And she did. And quickly the symptoms started going away. And a year later, she was symptom-free, and she's beat MS. She went out and found there's many other people who have the same story. So why don't we know this? Because our medical establishment, doctors are great, but in their training, there's not a focus on prevention. And there's a focus on once you get to that emergency position, the difficult thing, you have that heart attack or you have an aneurysm or something, then we treat it, but we don't try to focus on health. And so she started working on this film. I joined. I've been involved with it for a year and a half, 2 years. And we've been showing it around the world. We showed it to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, 1,000 people, full packed house, standing ovation. We've been showing it. We've been having screenings around the country, Australia, Canada, many other places. And it's her story. It's her story of regaining health through plant-based eating, through lifestyle medicine, which also includes appropriate sleep, exercise, centering, meditation. So I feel so lucky that I can play a small part in Code Blue and helping to get it out there, helping to have some screenings, and helping Sarai to get the word out about her personal story. It's really hats off to her for bearing her soul, sharing such a personal journey that she's had, and hoping that this will help other people avoid some of the problems that she's had.
Some of the problems, right. And what can I ask, when's the last time you saw her?
So with COVID, she's in New Jersey and I'm here in North Carolina.
Okay.
So last time I saw her was maybe a year ago or so, just before the pandemic.
Got it. Now you mentioned, and this is the last thing I will ask. So you mentioned you wanted to talk briefly about the pandemic or the COVID. So hit that, and I'll sign you off after you do that.
Okay.
This has been great, by the way. I appreciate this. This has really been really good.
And you haven't even asked me about food. I could spend an hour talking about tofu, but I guess that's not to be today. Before I answer the thing of COVID, am I allowed to brag a tiny bit?
Go.
And I'm bragging for a specific reason. I'm not bragging to kind of brag, but I'm bragging to say something. I've been vegan about 20 years. I've known my wife about almost 17 years. This May it'll be 17 years. And here's the brag, and I have proof of it. 17 years, I do almost all the cooking, all vegan, pretty much all whole food, plant-based, no added fat, no oils. I have never repeated dinner for her. She has never had the same dinner twice in the 17 years I've known her. And the reason I'm bragging about that isn't to say, look how great I am, because I'm not. I'm a pretty good chef. I'm not the greatest. I'm pretty good, right? It's not to say that. The reason I'm bragging is to share with our viewers here, if you want to go plant-based, it opens worlds to you. It's easy. I can still think of so many dishes I've not made that I want to make. For example, today I decided to cook with pineapple. And so I made an interesting pineapple dish where I combined pineapple with tempeh. I used some noodles with that. I threw in some sauces, some seasoning. Everybody loved it. My daughter loved it. She doesn't usually like pineapple. My wife said, this is outstanding. And I've
Wow.
never done anything like that before. So again, I try to be humble. I'm not trying to say I'm a great chef. I'm trying to say, if I can do it, you can do it.
You
It's
can do it.
easy to be vegan. It's easy, easy, easy. It's much easier than you would think. So
Got
that's
it.
my brag, if I'm allowed. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I love that brag. And I know every person, every woman in the country, in the world is like, okay, really? Every single day? That's incredible. I'm loving that. That's a good story. That's a good one.
And then
Go ahead.
COVID.
Go ahead.
So COVID, and if you're interested, I could share some links. I've actually written several articles for a couple of magazines on this topic. So there's so much evidence. If you go plant-based, it's going to help. It's going to reduce the odds you're going to end up with diabetes, cancer, various kinds of cancer, high blood pressure. So if you go vegan, we can't promise you won't get COVID. Veganism doesn't protect you against COVID-19. It just doesn't. It's a virus. But if you look at the CDC, it's been saying that it's the comorbidities. If you are overweight, if you have diabetes, if you have any number of other conditions, it greatly increases your chances of having bad outcomes if you get COVID. So the good news is, if you're vegan, if you're plant-based, and you do get COVID, and I know vegans who've gotten COVID, it's transmissible. If you're vegan and you get COVID, it greatly increases the chances that it will be a nice outcome. You're much less likely to die or have long-term effects from COVID, it seems. We can't say for sure about long-term effects. There's just not enough data.
Right,
But,
it's too early right now.
But something like 92% of people who are dying of COVID have comorbidities that vegans don't tend to get. So that's the good story about COVID. I can't promise that you won't get COVID if you go vegan, but if you are vegan, the outcomes are probably not going to be death.
So, Chef Delip Barman, I thank you. I want to ask, is there one message that you want our viewers to remember? Just one message.
The message is plant-based is easy. It's the best thing you can do for yourself, the best thing you can do for the environment. It has tremendous social justice implications. It's the best thing you can do for the animals. And it's easy and it tastes great. Give it a try.
I love it. We're signing off on this, Chef. Stay tuned. We're heading into the next one. I appreciate you, sir. You have a great 2021 and World Humanitarian Drive. We're out. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited because this is Chef Tony Thorne, and he is an incredible, there we go. He's an incredible chef. He's gone anywhere from the clothing line back in the 90s all the way to the current day. He's infused both his worlds. I'm going to jump right in. My first question to you, sir, is first of all, welcome. Chef Tony, I want to know, your story is so strong. It's so interesting. And I wanted to know, can you walk us through your start on how you merged your clothing creations and your cooking talents? Let's just start there.
I have to say it starts with fashion. Way back in the early 90s, I was in Munich, Germany, just getting out of the military, happened to open my first shop with another friend of mine named Tony. And we meet another kid from New York City named Tony. And he wanted to start a brand called Mecca USA. That allowed me to start enjoying food, and maybe at a privilege level. You know, we had budgets back then, so there was an opportunity to go out, enjoy New York City, enjoy California. We were traveling, going to London, going to Hong Kong, going to Japan. And I gotta say that first trip to Japan, obviously influenced of obviously sushi and Japanese techniques of food, mind-boggling. So I'm very curious about that. And over the next decade, let's say, I moved to Hong Kong. I start really looking at food very differently, intensely. I start becoming good friends with some of the world's best chefs, master sushi chefs, who train guys from Barcelona, who have Michelin stars. I meet a young entrepreneur, and I'm starting to eat at a particular place called Kenjo Daily in Hong Kong. And I became so very close to the owner that I designed this uniform and jean set using traditional Japanese press and gold yarn and the whole thing. And we made the aprons. And that was my first interaction maybe with food, seriously, and fashion. That's it, Hong Kong.
I love it. I love it. And here you are today. Perfect. So you know what? When I'm thinking about today now, this is, just shifting a little bit because we know that within the last year, it's been extremely serious. pretty much many people across the country, across the world, have had to start over via their passion, via their career, due to this pandemic. So can you talk to us about how you started over? I mean,
I really
it's
can.
not an easy process to go from one industry to the other. So talk about that, even show us.
I can show you, and it's something so incredible. I'm going to take you through the space. And this is what I believe the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, provided for me. Having retired from fashion 12 years ago, I wasn't planning to come back. Food is what I do, is what I wanted to do. And I was lucky enough in Hong Kong 8 years ago to be involved with Maximum Concepts and start opening restaurants. And we did it from Las Vegas, we did it in Vancouver, we did it in Macau, in the casino. You know, here's a little kitchen, a little table, a refrigerator, a freezer, prep sink, coffee machine, ice maker. What we do here is very simple, but it's a vegan menu and mostly raw. You know, we just have to prep things, so that keeps that food part simple. But here is the part that brought me back. As you walk up the steps, support your homies. You're welcoming right now something unique you don't find everywhere. Above the food space, sewing machines and a tailor, young Gustavo, young sport, responsible for crafting some of the most intricate handcrafted imported fabric materials from around the world into garments that you see hanging in the back, cutting patterns on the table, making it happen right here. You see art and young individuals. There's nothing but inspiration around us all the time. So after a few months here, just creating food and doing senior food programs for the senior citizen program and elderly, I was inspired to come back also. And the owner provided an environment and a platform that has allowed me to do that. So that's kind of the easy part for me. I was provided the tools and the environment, and I had the knowledge and ability, and I was just like awakened sleeping giant, you could say, in my eyes, in my mind. And, you know, just having support, people who believe in you. And I guess you just got to believe in yourself. That's the key.
That's definitely the key, believing in yourself. Now, as we go back downstairs, talk to me about your community outreach. So I've been titling a lot of the chefs that we are going to be talking to. The first one is definitely a vegan community servant. I consider you absolutely a community servant. Can you tell me a little about how you created your community outreach, pretty much as it relates to your clothing and food? I know you had a food truck, and you were telling me about a food truck.
So there was a Mark Ridley is a city councilman in Los Angeles. He's like the top, I guess, top city councilman for that position. And Chase is a local icon in the community due to his history in music, fashion, and I guess quite diverse. Like he's been to Paris, he's been to London. He's done that whole tour with as an artist and also managing some of hip hop like A$AP Rocky, and right now he's got Griselda. So some of hip hop's biggest iconic artists, and he's worked even Robert Glasper, like the jazz legend. So Chase has also been at Def Jam and through a number of record label deals, and again, just people don't understand maybe the backside of what's going on sometimes in Hollywood or the entertainment industry. But managers might be A&Rs, they might be creative directors and helping to develop, you know, video themes and skits and ideas and concepts, so that they act as creative directors as well. Because obviously, to benefit the artist is to benefit them. So there are relationships here in this community. This is known as Little Africa, and it's South Central. It's a historical district. This is Leimert Park, designed by the WHD Media company back in 1962, I believe, or even earlier. So there's a lot of history in this neighborhood, and Chase literally has a home around the corner. So we are an extension, not only maybe I guess of internet and fashion, I mean entertainment in the last 25 years, but here in Los Angeles, Chase's family is kind of a big extension to the community. So we were invited to participate in the senior meal program when lockdown, when COVID started, and we do 150 meals, 3 days a week. Went out to 11 different homes, you know, and I think we ended up feeding like 1,500 people over, you know, X amount of time period. And, you know, even the governor came down eventually and spoke to us, congratulated, did a press conference here. So, you know, we're active. I mean, obviously you can't see it now because it's dark outside, but there's a community fridge. They're literally outside across the street. We donate coffee, we donate food. There's a food drive. Whole Foods also participates across the street. You know, Hot and Cool Kitchen across the street. There's so many participants because we do have mental issues here in LA. We have homeless issues that I guess are far greater than any other community in America. So we're used to doing it, but it's like our duty, man. We got to do it. If not, it'll be, you know, like outrage outside in the streets. They'll be rioting. So, you know, it's obviously something we feel great about, but man, we wish that, you know, everyone can participate and everyone can be a part of that. And, it's just what we do. No room.
Well, like I was explaining when we were offline, that this is, an international organization. What you're talking about, how you're sharing your brand is definitely going to go global in regard to where we're able to present you kind of to the other side of the world. But I think that the most important part about what you're bringing to the table is a message that you don't need to stop and be only in one of your passions, that you can be in many of your passions. And then I want to know a personal tip of what is your favorite dish? What do people come to you and they're just like, if they had anything that you wanted to cook or anything you wanted to serve them, what is that dish?
Right now, it's the awesome avocado and maybe the boom boom burrito. In the breakfast category, it's the awesome avocado. In the afternoon, they're having the breakfast burrito, for sure.
Okay.
The boom boom burrito, it morphs into a more serious experience, actually, in the afternoon.
And I believe we ended up, we're showing that in the B-roll, but I mean, I got to come to LA and taste it. I'm just right here in Las Vegas. So I'm getting that 20-minute flight when the pandemic slows down, and I'm going to get right to that avocado. So my last question to you, sir, Chef, any words of wisdom that you'd want our viewers to remember from watching and listening to you today?
Eat well, exercise, nourish the mind, body, and soul. Never stop learning. I think, I'm nearing a half-century mark and the milestone for me and what I believe and kind of how I was raised in America, first-generation American. I think that's a landmark for us. And, you gotta I think there's a lot that I want to say to people because I lived it. I never stopped chasing my dreams. And I don't think they were huge, maybe per se, but to some other people they were. I've lived a life that most people can't imagine. I speak different languages. I've lived all over Europe. I've lived in Asia. I spent time in spiritual ashrams in India. And now it's like the Hong Kong to Hollywood journey. And I'm here in LA. And, we're doing so much, and it is so, I see a potential for so much more 10, 20 years down the line. I don't understand retirement and people slowing down and stopping any of that because the journey is endless as long as your heart's beating and you got love in your heart. I can't imagine doing anything else. I don't want to stop.
Chef, I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, WHD, World Humanitarian Drive. We are proud, we are honored to have brought you Chef Tony Thorne, Los Angeles, California. Please, if you ever get to LA, check this brother out. Appreciate you signing off.
Tony Magnetic, check out the Instagram. You got us. We're here. Always. Come eat. Come hang out. Get coffee. Do whatever. Get merchandise. Experience it. It's culture. It's what we do. It's what we create.
So guess what, you all? We are now moving on to our third chef. This gentleman is Chef Jason Knicker. Now, I'm just going to give you a few things about him. He is a pastry chef. He is an author of Liquorland, which was a nominated book, a James Beard nominated book. He's from New York, been in Florida, still remains and resides in Florida, currently been to Shanghai, cooked in, international, world-renowned chef. And I would just want to welcome our last and final chef for today, Chef Jason Knicker. What's up, sir? How are you?
John, thanks for having me, buddy.
No, it's my honor. It's our honor to have you here. Jason, I'm going to jump right in. I just wanted to, of course, let you know that the other chefs, we've all had a kind of similar saying, and that we've all had some experiences with cancer. And as many of you know that are watching, my kind of nonprofit is Twirling to Fight Cancer, and it's a breast cancer nonprofit. And Jason, you and I had a really close conversation offline about our mothers. And I was explaining about how my mother's a breast cancer survivor, and you had shared how your mother had breast cancer and unfortunately lost her battle with breast cancer. But I wanted to give her the honor and give her respect today, and I think it's most appropriate. And I wanted to know if you could share with our viewers a little bit about your mom and her significance to your cooking and your baking. Just tell us a little about that story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, actually, we grew up in Long Island. Long Island, that's one word, get coffee and bagels in Long Island. And grew up just typical fantasy land, had a great upbringing. We were always big eaters. Like food was what we lived for, eating. And we were large. We were all large people, large appetites. And then, I never had any ambition to cook or anything like that. I just wanted to eat because I was just an animal. So around when I was 18, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. It was a combination of lung and breast. So that's not good. And what happened was, at the time, I don't know if you remember, there was a brand called Snackwells. And we used to go and buy the cookies, but unfortunately we'd eat like two boxes in one sitting. So it defeats the purpose of Snackwells. So she was placed on a special diet that was low carb, low fat, and low sugar. So, it was over the summer in like 94, I think. She's like, I can't even remember. And we started trying to make stuff together. And it was absolutely disgusting, John. Like, it was like eating cardboard. I mean, not that I eat cardboard, but, it was horrible. And that's how I actually got into baking. It was like a mother-son bond.
Okay.
And, through trial and error, a lot of trial and error, eventually we made stuff that was remotely edible. And that's how that what sparked my passion within me to get into pastry. Now, the crazy ironic part is that my mother passed away a year later, and she never knew that I went on to become a pastry chef. So it's sort of strange. And it's sort of strange to me how it's just like the whole connection and my whole journey up to now makes me always reflect about those moments. The first time, like, everybody's asking me, like, well, how did you start cooking? When I explain to it, it's not exactly the happy story.
Right,
But
right.
That's how we persevere, get stronger, and move on. So for me, cooking is a deep-rooted connection.
Yeah. So first of all, I thank you for sharing the story. I thank you for sharing it. And I think that if you don't mind, I think it's most appropriate. Like I said, let's just make this episode in honor of your mom and all the breast cancer survivors and those that may have not been able to just kill that battle within the breast cancer. We're going to dedicate it to them. So I want to then go and just transition right away to then, what are we cooking? Let's get started.
Okay, check this out.
Cooking?
Now, what we're going to make is the best of both worlds. I love chocolate chip cookies and I love double chocolate chip cookies. So we're going to combine them into one, making one dough. This is super simple and easy that anyone can make at home, and there's no excuse. I sent you the recipe, so you'll put it up everywhere. And if you notice, there's nothing around me, like, it's just my hands. These are the best tools, people, are your hands. Now, we're going to go through some quick protocol things so people are switched on and understand where I'm coming from. And this is to help you become a better chef at home. Okay, first of all, preheat your oven. So this recipe calls for 356 Fahrenheit. If you want to go 350, I'll give you a pass. Number two, you're going to measure all your mise en place, measure all your ingredients. So you don't get like somebody's calling you and you forget to weigh the baking soda. Your girlfriend, wife, boyfriend, whatever is yelling at you because you didn't put the toilet seat down or something, who knows, whatever. So there's no distraction, everything's ready. And number three, the most important, is the secret ingredient that you can't measure, and it's inside, it's love. So this is what I want to portray with my cooking, because it's pretty ironic that I was an English major in college, so I used to write a lot of poetry, and that transitioned into pastry, because you sort of have sweet, sour, salty, and bitter, and you could convey those emotions through pastry as well. This is just going to be sweet with a little bitter, because you can't have the sweet without the bitter. Mm-hmm. You need to know what's going on. So all we have here, we're going to just get right into it. All we have here is our brown sugar, butter, and white sugar. Now, there's no KitchenAid machine, no handheld blender. You're just going to use a spatula. The secret to this, it's not really a secret, is that just take out everything to be room temperature, like your butter and eggs. Anything refrigerated, you're going to pull out hours before, even the night before. Because when you start mixing all the fats together and sugar, it's going to help emulsify much faster. So we're just going to mush this together quickly, and I'm going to show you what we're doing. So,
and Jason, do you know, as far as blender or mixer, I should say, versus spatula, what is the preference, or is there?
Now, of course, if you have a KitchenAid mixer, that would always be better, because what you're doing is you're creaming the butter. That's a little cooking term, creaming the butter, which pretty much means you're beating the butter and sugar for a good 5 minutes, and you're aerating a little bit. That's why the color always becomes lighter. But I find with this recipe, it's not the end of the world. Like, I've been actually making this for quite a while, and it's really hard to mess this up. Like, if you have to forget to add the flour or something. You just have to forget what you're doing completely. So it's really hard to mess up. I mean, I messed it up, but it's difficult to do that. So we're just going to bring this together. And, you know, it's just pretty simple. So you just already have it. I got my dog in the background. He's my sous chef. So this is just mixed up like this. You see the butter, sugar? It's just mixed up. Then we have here our egg and vanilla. Now, like I said, the egg is room temperature. So we're going to put that right in. And then we're going to mix that in. Okay. So what we're doing here, usually if you had a KitchenAid, you'd make sure it's super creamy, but you're going to see in a second that without the KitchenAid, this is going to be super creamy anyway. And what I love about this cookie too is that we're just using white chocolate chips and dark chocolate chips, but this is super versatile. You can use any spice, any nut, any dried fruit you want. It's really up to you. See, now in 2 seconds, that was all you really need. So this is all together. Now we have our all-purpose flour, baking soda, and salt. We're going to just dump that right in and mix it in. And that's pretty much your base for your cookie. So like I said, what we're going to do, since we want to make something cool, you're not going to have me on here to just make a chocolate chip cookie. No, that's too status quo. So we're going to mix this together. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually divide the cookie I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then we're going to divide it in half. Then half of it's going to get some cocoa powder, and half of it's going to get a little more flour. And it's the same amount. We're just adding it so it's equal like structure. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be half dark chocolate and half chocolate chip. Mm-hmm. So it's the best of both worlds, like I was talking about. Okay, so we're almost there. And this is it. You know, you could have the music on, have a glass of wine, do whatever you want. You're making cookies, having a good time. And the most important part about this is that this brings smiles, and this brings laughter. It brings love. You're sharing. For me, the way I grew up, especially like when I was young, man, I was really heavy. I was like 140 pounds in 6th grade, and food brought me joy. It brought me joy until a girl in 9th grade said I was funny but fat. So then I dropped the weight. So food, I think, is in no matter what culture, no matter where you are, it always brings happiness and joy and helps you forget about the pain.
Yeah, I knew this was a winner when you told me you were breaking a chocolate chip cookie. I was like, okay, you said it's a different chocolate chip cookie, but yeah. Go ahead. What do you have there right now? Can't be the same.
So this is the dough, the chocolate chip cookie dough base. So now I'm going to take my scale. People always use a scale. Remember, if you use a measuring cup, if you measure flour or sugar 10 times, you're going to have 10 different measurements, and that's going to affect your recipe. So there's a little tip right there. Okay. So I'm going to measure this, half of it. And then we're going to mix the rest of the ingredients in. People are like, well, you just mixed everything. But no, not everything. Okay. Wait a second.
So now while you're putting that in, I just have a question.
Yes.
That actually is a little deep. Your food heals the soul. And I know with everything that's been going on with the pandemic, people and just lives have changed. What are your thoughts about bringing this global community together with food? You know what I'm saying? You have this platform. How do you see it? And how has it been throughout these past year now as it relates to the pandemic?
It's definitely affected my life for sure. I had to cancel 8 months of traveling in Asia. But I took advantage of that. And what I did was I finished my second cookbook, Baking with Liquor. So that was a great opportunity. But it's pretty insane in what's going on. And it's just like, you always fear something like this would happen in the world. And I think it's our job to bring everybody up, to lift everybody's soul up, because people that are unfortunate, that might not have the same resources or health that we do, they need help. And this is the time people should be helping each other. Like, I see some crazy stuff on TV, and it's just not acceptable to me. And I will not let that drag me down. I don't let anything drag me down. I only bring people up to my level. So I try to spread the love, spread the energy. And what I always find everywhere I've been is that besides like me doing something stupid and, making people laugh, being like, do some, whatever it takes to make someone smile, I'll do. But I just noticed everywhere, because I worked in Asia for 15 years, man. Anytime you bring out the sweets, it's just like young, old, it doesn't matter. Like people just light up. And I think
gravitate to it.
Yeah, it's just, I'm saying it's just in moderation. I'm not saying like, go to like an ice cream shop and eat a whole gallon of ice cream, anything in moderation, because that's what's going to protect yourself is health. And you need those. And you need those fats too. You just can't, like, I read all these things about like keto and vegan and this and that. Well, you do need fat. Like it's not all evil, but if you eat 400 cookies, yeah, it's pretty bad.
And you know what, that's what our first chef was talking about, because he's a vegan chef and he cooks from that plant-based, and he was explaining how it's still about balance. It's still about moderation. So it's interesting how, as you're the last chef, you still bringing it back around full circle in regard to just anchoring balance and then cooking from the heart, literally.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything's about balance in life, which I learned sometimes, when I was younger, going out a little bit, I learned about that. But as you get older, you start to realize, like, it's really about like life balance and health choices and exercise. And, you need to really, it's like you're on a balance beam. Mm-hmm. And right now we're training for life. We're in it, and we're in it to win it. So, I mean, it's a crazy time, but also it's a time for people to reflect, and those that are a little more fortunate take advantage and help people. That's what I'm all about. You got to help people.
What about that book, Liquorland? Is
yes.
it something where we can find this recipe inside there? Of course, the recipe will be on our website, World Humanitarian Drive. But in regard to just people who want to pick up your book, what does that look like as compared to maybe some of your other cookbooks? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay. I actually self-published both cookbooks, which led me to be mentally insane. We did everything. I wrote everything, then it got edited. Hired a photographer who's one of the most talented creative people I know. His name's Jason Lang. And, I printed the first one in Bangkok. The first one is called Liquorland, Asian Accented Desserts by Jason Licker. Right here. Oh, what a coincidence. Right. So this one is more restaurant, like fancy schmancy desserts. And my newer one, which I self-published once again, that came out in September, is called Baking with Liquor. That's all home baking with Asian accents. I mean, so pretty much, I was in Asia for 15 years, and I'm the guy that makes the desserts with Asian ingredients, like to modernize it, become approachable. So this cookie recipe is actually in Baking with Liquor, but it's made with ponzu sauce. Okay. So ponzu sauce is citrus soy. So I use that as sort of a salt replacer with a little citrus kick. And it just totally brightens up the cookie. When I first say that to people, like, oh, ponzu sauce. I'm like, no. You need to think of soy sauce as salt. It's like when you accentuate a steak with salt. It's the same thing, accentuating a chocolate chip cookie. Got it. So both of those books could be found on my website, jasonlicker.com or amazon.com. Let me show you what we have here now, because this looks pretty damn good. Okay.
I'm so mad during this pandemic, I can't even taste the cookies. I'm like, I got to go and make it on my own now.
Yeah, you know what? Like, every time I post some cookies, like it gets a little crazy. People are like, send me these, send me them. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work like that exactly. Especially now with the mail, man. It's crazy. Okay, so what we have here, we have two different doughs. We have our double chocolate dough with white chocolate chips, and we have our chocolate chip cookie dough. So what I like to do is, because I'm a measuring freak, I'm going to take 25 grams of each. Just weigh it quick here. And because I want them to all be exactly the same weight, so they all bake the same. I don't want like I hate when I see something in the back bake faster than the front. It drives me nuts. And people always rotate everything in the oven halfway through your baking time. Okay, so this is what you're going to come out with right here. Oop, hold on, we lost a little bit. Right here. So this is, there we go, chocolate chip cookie dough and double chocolate chip cookie dough. Then you're just going to roll it in a ball like so. Now, if you can resist and control yourself, if you can, and not eat this, that's one thing. If you can resist and control yourself, let the dough rest overnight. It just improves the texture of any cookie. Because think about it, you have protein in the flour and protein in the eggs, and you want that to like meld together. And it's just going to change the texture. Now you can just bake it right away and it's going to be great. But it just gives it a better texture. And this is what you're going to come out with.
Uh-oh. Oh, stop it. Are you serious?
This is it.
Incredible. I cannot even. Wow, man, that is really nice.
So what's cool about this too is that, like, let's say you don't even want to do that. Then you have the chocolate chip cookie recipe and the double white chocolate chip cookie recipe. You have two recipes in one. You could either make the hybrid like so, or just whatever you would like to do. Or just create your own type of cookie. That's what's so good about this. You're the boss.
So, okay, get those books again. I want to show everyone the books because now they really want to buy it. They really want to figure out how to make these. So this is okay.
That's baking with liquor. This one is I like to make fun of myself quite a bit. So this one is more home baking.
Okay.
And there's quite a lot of funny stuff in both of them. And this one is more restaurant fancy schmancy desserts. But
it's almost like a formal cookbook.
It's more technical, more tricks. You need certain equipment. That's why I want to do a home baking book. So like you could just go to the supermarket and buy anything and just create magic.
Okay, so last question. What message do you want people to understand about your desserts?
I want people to understand that, like, as we mentioned, the secret ingredient is all about love. That I get the greatest joy, not when I eat desserts, because I barely even eat them anymore, believe it or not. But the greatest joy when I see the reaction of somebody eating something I made. Because, like, you're using your hands, you're putting your heart and soul into it. And that's my reward, is seeing someone enjoy it. And I think especially in this day and age, right now, when there's so much struggling, doing something for someone, even just making a cookie makes such a huge difference on someone. Like, make that call, check in on your grandma or check in on anybody, make cookies, give one to your neighbor. It's the act of helping people and loving and sharing that's going to really get this world back on track. Not just a vaccine in your arm. You can all get a vaccine shot in your arm, but with the wrong attitude, it's not going to matter.
Right. It's the humanitarian way. So, I mean, it kind of
totally
fits right in perfect alignment with World Humanitarian Drive. I want to respect your time. I know in Florida it's getting late there, but seriously, this has been incredible. I'm going to fly myself right to Florida, get that cookie, and have you make it right there in front of me.
Man,
but seriously,
right here,
once again, I thank you for your time. We've got Chef Jason Licker, and it's jasonlicker.com.
Yes.
jasonlicker.com, Licker. Folks looking out there, watching, we thank you for looking today, viewing our whole entire show today. It was incredible. We had 3 incredible chefs. It was called Food Resolutions 2021. And at the end of this all, we want everyone to remember that it's just about cooking with love, cooking with that care, making a difference, being as healthy and balanced as you can be. And with that, I want to thank you, Chef Jason, and I'm signing off. This is John Baton, board member for World Humanitarian Drive, and have a good one. See you next time.